týmto by som veľmi chcela pekne predstaviť moju kolegyňu, kamarátku Kristu Lough, ktorá je konzervatorka fotografií v Moderna Museet v Stockholme vo Švédsku. Svoj magisterský titul a certifikát Advanced Studies in Conservation získala na Buffalo State College v roku 2014. Absolvovala postgraduálne stáže v Metropolitnom múzeu v New Yorku, v ateliéri Paul Messier LLC, súkromnú prax v Bostone. Získala štipendium v Art inštitúte v Chicagu, kde pôsobila rok po svojom magisterskom titule a následne bola 2 roky v Museum of Modern Art v New Yorku. Krista donedávna pôsobila v Art inštitúte v Chicagu, kde taktiež v podstate pôsobila ako reštaurátorka fotografií a následne pracovala v archíve Johnson Publishing Company pre Getty Research Institute v Národnom múzeu afroamerickej histórie a kultúry. V súčasnosti naďalej pokračuje v spolupráci s týmto archívom a po občasnom návrate do Chicaga v podstate vedie workshopy v rámci úvodu do konzervovania fotografií pre študentov na Historical Black Colleges and Universities. Vítam Kristu.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Just make sure I'm in all order. All right. So today I will present strategies for the long-term preservation of photographic materials utilized by larger institutions in the US and my current place of employment, Moderna Museet in Stockholm, Sweden. I will divide my talk into 2 main sections: the storage and exhibition of photographic materials. I will discuss both topics, concentrating on the preservation strategies we can employ to help preserve the life of the photographic object while still allowing the works to be shared and enjoyed by the public. Let's dive right into our discussion on the storage of photographic materials. This section will cover housing solutions, storage environments, and various practical storage considerations. Several factors must be considered when determining the best housing solution for the object in storage. These include the scale and the size of the object, its fragility, and its presentation method. Is it permanently framed, matted, or loose? And its dimensionality. Does it present more like an object than a sheet of paper? In all the institutions I've worked in, we generally have the same philosophy on storage methods. Smaller paper-based photographic materials are housed in boxes, either matted with a sheet of interleaving paper or loose and placed in a paper or plastic folder. Cased objects and other smaller dimensional objects, such as glass plate negatives, books, and albums, and small 3-dimensional photographs like photo buttons, are often housed in paper-based boxes and/or four-flap enclosures made of thin board or paper. These small boxes can be safely stored in padded drawers, laying flat, or vertically on shelves. The decision on how to store them is often based on several factors, such as the size and the weight of the object and the storage space available. If several glass objects are placed in a box, the box should be labeled glass and heavy. This will alert the person handling the box to its inherent fragility. Of course, because of limited funding for storage, there's always, which is always an issue, you can see that not all of our books are housed in the boxes as we would desire. Storage is always a work in progress. Multi-component installations or artworks consisting of several small loose materials are often housed together in binders, in plastic binder sleeves. This allows for the viewing of a large number of objects while keeping the context of the work together. This installation of over 3,000 small objects is housed in several small binders with clear plastic sleeves. This allows the curator to safely view the objects in the installation for future exhibitions without directly handling the materials. The types of housing materials used at the institutions I have worked in have differed. However, the primary focus has been on the quality of materials. All of the materials should be chemically and physically stable. The enclosure constructions need to be structurally sound and sturdy. The surface should be smooth and non-abrasive. It should contain no colorants or non-bleeding colorants. And ideally, the material has passed the PAT test, which is the photoactivity test. The paper-based materials selected for storage from the box, the map board, and the interleaving paper should have the following qualities: a high alpha cellulose content from rag, cotton, and/or chemically purified wood pulp, a pH of 7 to 9.5. Buffered paper should be used when appropriate. Cyanotypes can be damaged by buffered paper, so often unbuffered paper is recommended when in close proximity to cyanotypes. The paper should also be lignin-free. Glassine, used by many institutions in the past, is gradually being phased out in every institution I've worked in. Glassine can stick to the surface of gelatin-based photographs when moisture is introduced, which can damage the photographic binder. Glassine is also not permanent and can age and yellow over time. The general approach to replacing glassine interleaving has been to replace it when the object returns to storage after exhibition, loan, conservation, or viewing, instead of going through the entire collection in storage and replacing every sheet. This is due to time constraints and budgetary restrictions. Plastic materials used in storage should have the following qualities. They should be inert and stable with minimal plasticizer content. Polyester is the best plastic material choice. It is the most inert, chemically, dimensionally stable, and rigid of the plastic storage options. Polyester film materials are often called by their brand names, Mylar or Melanex. Polyester is also used in some plastic folded enclosures. Other generally stable plastics include polypropylene, polyethylene, and polystyrene, which are often used in plastic binder sleeves for film storage, where more flexibility in the plastic is desired. Plastics that should not be used for storage are cellulose nitrate, cellulose acetate, or PVC, polyvinyl chloride. PVC was historically used in binder sleeves for films and slides, and it can be very damaging. They can transfer plasticizer to your object and stick to the surface. These historic sleeves are often replaced with inert plastic sleeves or paper-based folders and boxes. And this covers the basics of how larger institutions manage their housing of their smaller photographs, which I imagine is utilized by many museums and archives. One of the biggest storage challenges frequently in my work is how best to store large photographic materials and large multi-component installations. Large photographs can be finished or presented in various ways. The pieces can generally be mounted and/or framed, or loose. Due to their sheer size and weight, large works are often mounted overall. Hinging these large works in a frame can lead to slumping and distortions in the sheet, so it's not necessarily a permanent option. And hopefully you can see here, this piece is mounted overall and extremely flat, and this piece on the right is hinged and has distortions from where the weight of the sheet is slumped. And this photograph is extremely large. It's difficult to tell from the picture. Large, loose photographs are typically stored rolled. They are then displayed loose, directly on the wall, or temporarily hinged in a frame. Large photographs stored on a roll should always be on a support tube. As with smaller works, the tube should be made of a high-quality paper. The larger the diameter of the tube, the better, as it will minimize the need for back rolling. An interleaving sheet should be rolled with the object to protect it from scratches. The tube can be stored in a box, suspended, or on a shelf, and it's important to add support ends to the tube to lift the roll so it's never resting directly on the photograph. Some photographs are permanently framed and glazed. Small and large framed photographs can be stored on screens or on shelves as space allows. If the frames are stored on shelves, a board should be placed in between each frame to prevent abrasions. Custom frame coverings can also be constructed, as seen in the center image here, where it wraps around the photograph with a little label on the outside. And this will prevent the frame size, and it also minimizes light exposure on the piece. And now let's discuss the true challenges. Since the mid-1980s, artists have worked in the production of large photographic prints. The scale of the prints adds new challenges in handling and display. Many artists favored two permanent finishing techniques to keep their works flat and eliminate the need for heavy glazing. These finishing techniques are face mounting and laminating. Face mounting involves permanently adhering a rigid sheet of clear acrylic to the surface of the photograph, while laminating involves permanently adhering a sheet of plastic film to the surface of the photograph. It is essential to be able to identify these techniques in order to properly display and store these objects. A face-mounted print will appear glossy. There is no air in between the print and the acrylic surface, so the print takes on the smooth, glossy appearance of the acrylic. These prints can be back-mounted, but they are not always. The acrylic surface is the new face of the object and should be treated with the same care as you would the photographic surface. A scratch to the acrylic surface is a scratch to the photographic object. Laminated prints often have a more matte appearance, but glossy films were available. They will look as if they have no glazing, like nothing on the print. The plastic film is very thin and provides no structural support for the photograph, so these prints will always be back-mounted. The plastic laminate can shrink if they're not stored in optimum conditions, and it's the film itself that shrinks, not the adhesive. And this will leave a sticky edge around the photograph, which can attract dust. And maybe you can see that dust sticking here on the edge of this print. Just like a face-mounted print, the plastic film is the new surface of the object, and it should be treated as such. Framed or unframed, face-mounted and laminated prints should be stored using the same methods, since the print surface is exposed and the frame does not offer much protection. The prints can be stored on screens or in large drawers as long as nothing is on the object's surface. The best method for storing these delicate objects is in a custom-built travel frame, as you can see in the picture in the center here. Oh, there. The travel frame functions like a box for the artwork. They protect the sides of the piece, and the artwork is really suspended in that box. And it can be wrapped to keep out dust and light, and you can see that in this print here, which is wrapped in poly and hung on a screen. Storing all face-mounted and laminated prints in travel frames has always been a strong desire in every institution I've worked in, but due to financial constraints, it's not always possible. And you can see here several of our face-mounted works are not in travel frames, but the goal is to get them there one day. Most large institutions have a substantial loan program. In an ideal world, the storage solution you develop for your large or complicated artwork can also be used for future transportation. Travel frames for large mounted or framed works need only an outer crate to be safely transported. And large, complex installation works can have custom-built housings for storage and transportation, as you can see in this large installation here. The cost of the housing is more substantial, but it fills a need for storage and transportation, saving time and effort in the future, and of course, money as well. There are various factors to consider in the storage environment. The environment should have a stable humidity and temperature. The air quality should be maintained to reduce pollutants and avoid off-gassing materials. Maintaining good housekeeping in your storage with regular cleaning and dusting is essential. This will minimize insect activity and help extend the life of the collection. Pest management is also a high priority. Establishing an integrated pest management protocol, keeping sticky traps and checking them regularly will identify any infestations early to avoid catastrophic damage to the collection. Security is also essential to limit unwanted access to the valuable collection. The storage environment for photographs is typically categorized by the storage temperature. These environments can be broken up into 4 categories: room temperature storage, cool storage, cold storage, and frozen storage. Many museums strive for cool storage for a bulk of their collection. Cold storage is reserved for particularly reactive prints. Chromogenic prints are the primary candidates for cold storage because they exhibit dye fading due to light and temperature. There has been an increasing concern with the yellowing of inkjet papers, so they are also recommended for cold storage. Reactive film-based materials, such as cellulose nitrate and cellulose acetate, are often recommended for frozen storage. However, it's best if these materials are not often requested for viewing, as preparing and retrieving them from a frozen environment is a delicate and complicated process. There are many practical aspects to consider in storage, such as having a workspace and gloves at hand to allow for safe handling of the collection. If staff regularly works in your storage space where the collection is stored, steps are often taken to cover the artworks to avoid unnecessary light exposure. Planning for future growth of the collection is essential and an internal struggle in large institutions with active acquisitions. Compact shelving systems are a valuable investment in storage as they can greatly increase the storage capacity. And I don't know if you can tell, but these rooms are the same size. And this is compact storage, and this is regular shelving. And it like quadruples the amount of storage you can have. Large photographs are typically stored on screens or in bins. Screen systems are more expensive, but allow more work to be stored in the space. Screen systems also have space-saving solutions. Screens typically have two main space-saving designs. They can pull out on tracks, allowing the screens to be installed close together, or they can collapse horizontally. Screen selection is often a result of the space's architecture. Screens that pull out have tracks that either suspend from the ceiling or the floor. These ones suspend from the ceiling. And there has to be enough space in the room to extend the screen entirely. And horizontally collapsible screens, like these ones here, use a floor track system. And they can be beneficial in very narrow spaces if you can't pull your screen out. Artwork spends most of its life in storage, and decisions made in terms of housing and environment can help extend the useful life of the work. Of course, one of the most crucial preservation methods is knowing what you have in your collection and where it is located. Museums always assign a unique number to every object in the collection, and information about the artwork is collected in a database. The object's current location is always tracked in the database. Whether in an exhibition, conservation lab, or in storage, knowing where your artwork is essential in its preservation. Let's move on to our discussion on exhibitions and how to protect the collection while it's on view. We will discuss how large museums manage security, light exposure, and the use of exhibition copies. Security is an essential component to every exhibition. The purpose of security in the galleries is to deter intentional destructive acts and minimize unintentional damage. The type of security depends on the object's display method and perceived risks. Security measures used by many institutions are mechanical deterrence, electronic sensors, physical barriers, and guard presence. Working with living artists can present challenges, and often they desire their art to be presented minimally with no barriers in between the art and the viewer. However, if repeated incidents on fragile objects occur, the level of security should be able to elevate. In the case of these large light box sculptures, a small label on the gallery floor asking visitors not to touch the artwork, this, was eventually changed to large stanchions and a sign here when repeated visitor interactions happened. Effective exhibition maintenance can minimize and track potential risks to the object during the exhibition. In general, exhibition maintenance should include environmental monitoring, housekeeping, and pest management. Museums use data loggers, hygrothermographs, and dosimeters to monitor the exhibition environment. This will help provide context to any perceived changes after the exhibition. Like in storage, dusting and pest management are essential for gallery maintenance. Photographic materials are susceptible to the cumulative damages effect of light, which are permanent. Managing light exposure through a selection of light sources, its intensity and duration of exposure is essential for long-term preservation. Photographic materials have a range of light sensitivities based on the type of the photographic process, its quality of processing, and past storage and display conditions. In general, UV and IR should be filtered from any light source to reduce harmful radiation. Photographs should not be exhibited in rooms with direct sunlight, as it is highly variable and can be very damaging. If windows are unavoidable, and sometimes they are, curtains, shutters, or UV blocking filters should be used to minimize exposure. Museums can employ different light sources in their exhibition spaces. The primary qualities to consider when selecting a light source are the following. The color rendering index, known as the CRI, which is a measure that relates to the lamp's ability to accurately portray color. A CRI of at least 90 is recommended for illuminating art. The heat output of the lamp should be low, and the UV radiation should be eliminated or filtered. The following lamps are often used in display. Incandescent tungsten lamps, which are not energy efficient and produce heat, but have a high coloring, rendering, and flexibility in wattage. Quartz halogen lamps, which have a higher bulb life, but can transmit more UV and produce excessive heat. Fluorescent bulbs, which produce less heat, but can generate higher levels of UV and have varying qualities. Understanding the lighting in the galleries is essential, and filtration can be used to minimize their damaging effects. Many museums are replacing their old lamps with light-emitting diodes, or LEDs. They are energy efficient, produce less heat, and have little to no UV. They also are dimmable, and in some cases, the color temperature can be adjusted. Replacing and retrofitting light systems can be a costly endeavor. However, many large institutions are switching to LEDs for their long-term benefit to the collection. A way to extend the life of the photograph on display is to control the intensity of the light the object is exposed to. When lighting in exhibitions, museums measure the light intensity of a light meter and adjust the lights to suit the object. Light levels are measured in lux or foot candles, and the following maximum illuminations are generally followed. Particularly sensitive photographs, like chromogenic prints and 19th century photographs, should not exceed 4.6 foot candles or 50 lux. Very sensitive photographs, such as dye transfer photographs and resin-coated black and white photographs, should have a maximum illumination of 7 foot candles or 75 lux. Sensitive photographs like Baryta paper, black and white photographs, should have a maximum illumination of 14 foot candles or 150 lux. The duration of exposure is also a controllable factor, and museums typically try not to exceed 6 months of exposure of a photographic object. And you can see I took the picture. This is on a vitrine, and this is way too high for this cyanotype. This is foot candles. Museums employ color measurements with a spectrophotometer to evaluate the change in the appearance of the artwork over time. The measurements are conducted on the object before and after the exhibition to track the actual change in appearance. In order to make comparable measurements, a measuring template is created for each artwork monitored. The template is typically made with a polyester sheet with a simple drawing of the artwork to aid in the placement, and various holes are punched in the template to signify the measuring sites. Many institutions I have worked at have been taking densitometry and now color measurements on their collection since the 1980s, so they have a robust history of the change of their art objects. The spectrophotometer records the wavelength distribution of reflected light on the surface and generates a code in a standardized color system, typically CIE-LAB. The color in this system is measured according to the lightness, position on the red-green axis, and position on the yellow-blue axis. Color measurements can track the change in this color system. Spectrophotometers are capable of measuring color changes not necessarily visible with the human eye, and changes are noted as a delta E. A delta E of more than 2.3 is known as the just noticeable difference, or the smallest color difference a human eye can see. When exhibiting particularly susceptible works like chromogenic prints and certain 19th century photographs, museums can employ color monitoring during the exhibition. The artwork is temporarily removed from the exhibition and color measurements are taken. If the delta E exceeds the just noticeable difference of 2.3, the object is removed from view and a different artwork is put in its place. The curator and the conservator should work together to identify highly susceptible artworks and plan for exhibition rotations. This is especially vital for long exhibitions that exceed a duration of 6 months. If a spectrophotometer is not available to monitor the change in color of the work, rotations can still be planned for sensitive works to protect them from the cumulative effects of light exposure. Another method museums employ to manage light exposure is to display exhibition copies. Exhibition copies or facsimiles can be used when the artwork is particularly sensitive to light exposure or when creative displays are desired, such as taping the artwork directly to the wall. Exhibition copies allow the public to enjoy the art object while protecting the original work. Exhibition copies are typically destroyed after the exhibition, as usually stated in the legal contracts between the museum and the artist. There is always a compromise between sharing the collection with the public and protecting it for future generations. As stewards of the collection, we take protective measures in storage and exhibitions to extend the life of the artwork as best we can. Thank you all so much for your attention. I'm sure that not all of this information is new, but I hope that you can take something away from my talk and apply it to your own collections. Thank you so much.